Because I was saying to you the other day that we have too many spreadsheets, and you're like, there's not enough spreadsheets.
He loves a spreadsheet. He loves a spreadsheet.
Because you said to me we have too many spreadsheets, and I said to you, how many spreadsheets have we got? And we went through, and there was about 5. And I'm thinking, that's not very many. Welcome everybody to another Outside Crowd podcast, and we're delighted to have with us today Ryan.
Yo!
Billy.
Hello.
And unfortunately we don't have Jake. Jake's got domestic duties.
Being a father.
Takes up a lot of his time, and it takes up a lot of his time, and it takes up a lot of his money. And today's episode, exciting episode, is we're going to be talking a bit more about money and finances within a company, and we're going to keep it just sort of fairly fluid and general, anyone asking questions and things that they want to raise. But I was interested to hear from the guys how they thought about when they started a company. Did they know much about financially managing a company and how the part finance played and how they would manage their money within that company? Who wants to take that one on?
I don't mind starting. I think, like, for me, I obviously just learned horticulture, then tree surgery. I worked in an office a little bit, but completely excluded from the financial sections of the companies. I was given a job, like I worked in the sales, yeah, fair enough, but I was young and I was seldom involved in actually what the company was turning over. You get targets and stuff, but aside from that, you don't know. At school, I couldn't give a flying fook about it, to be honest. Like, there was business studies and that sort of thing and statistics, but it wasn't my thing. I wasn't interested in it. I'd say now I am getting more interested in it, but at the start, it was a completely alien world to me. All I thought about was, I need to get a truck, I need to get a chipper, I need to get these train saws. If I go and see a job, I write them a quotation. When I'm done with that job, I write them an invoice. And that's it. Yeah. Basically, that was as much as I knew. Mm-hmm. Then obviously things like, how am I gonna raise the money for said truck? Okay, well, I need to get finance. So that's borrowing money. Again, that's really simple. Anyone can do it. But I think deep diving into it more, it's something I'm completely unaware of. Could I afford it at the time? How much work do I need to do to actually afford it? I didn't even bat an eyelid. It was, I'll just figure it out. So no, I had no idea.
How did you find it, Ryan? Did you ever think about it, or were you just like focused on doing the job? And
I think, like Bill said, Bill said he wasn't, his business studies in school, he wasn't focused on that. I wasn't focused on school, so I was sitting there going, good on you, but because it's like, it's simple. We go to the job, price the job, get the job, do it. And so, once it gets to that stage that you're not just in the one van or the little van, things change. So no, at the beginning of this, I didn't have much of an idea of what I should be doing. I got what I needed to get done because things got paid, and that's the way it was. And I was never a fan of borrowing money because I've always gone off that if we don't have it, we don't get it. And even if we were to borrow money for something, I would always like to think we have it in our account and then make an executive decision. Do we buy it? We do have the money to buy it outright. Is it better to buy it, on finance? But I always like to think we have it on us, beforehand. But it's once you
just financed a truck there, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. What made you change your mind about finance?
I guess it was communicating with JB about what we should do. The money that we had in our company was the money we've worked very hard to get. Now we're buying a new vehicle. We could buy the vehicle. It was an older vehicle, it's not a new vehicle. It's second hand. We did have the money to buy it outright, but we made a decision not to because there was finance options on. And
to have the cash flow sitting there, to have the cash sitting there is better.
That's it. Yeah. So but I wouldn't have that conversation before.
Yeah.
If I had the money, it was going on it, and that may have, and this was before we bought that vehicle, but that may have not worked out, before, because the cash flow could have run dry. That puts our company into lots of trouble. Not having a few quid running forward makes a big change, and these are the things that I definitely weren't aware about running a company.
Did both of you think that when you set up the company, you obviously knew you needed an accountant? Did you think that the accountant's job would be one just to do the money side was his, and then you got on with the work?
To be honest, I literally thought an accountant did your tax return. I seriously, that's all I thought they did. I thought I just give them the invoices and my receipts, and that's what an accountant does.
Wow.
I didn't even know they did this cash flow shit. I honestly had no idea.
Yeah. I'm very lucky.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know. To be fair,
That's what I'm saying.
my accountant's a dear friend of mine, very dear friend of mine's dad, and he's always helped me out. And he's always been the one I've turned up with a big box of receipts in a shoe box. And I've got them all. He's looking at me shaking his head, and I'm like, but I've got them all.
Because most of them don't. In terms of like cash flow, they can do sort of theoretical sort of cash flows, but a lot of the day-to-day cash flow planning is stuff that you do yourself.
In-house,
like I do with you and say with you as well, Bill. It's literally those sort of day-to-day transactions. So you can put the money in just to see, how much money have we got coming in, how much is going out, am I going to have enough money to pay the bills in 2 months' time?
That's it.
And that literally can be a line-by-line cash flow approach, which I always think people should do themselves within their own company, because if you're relying on someone else to do that, I don't think those other people are going to know the details. The accountant certainly isn't going to be up to date with every specifics that jobs that you got coming in, what your income is, and it needs to be something that you need to have, a really tight grip on.
Yeah. How in depth do you think you need to analyse your finances, especially early on? Because I've managed to do it all right without looking at anything for like 3 years. So,
but I think that's what's in. But the same here. Like absolutely same here. I can how long we've been going for, and I've always been self-employed before, doing other bits and pieces, and it's kind of like I've made it this far.
Yeah,
that's as far as you're going to make it.
It's very different. I think if you had a business partner and someone was really good at that side, and you were good at the physical side.
Yeah.
I mean that relationship might not work. I don't know, but I think this may just be me, but the most important thing in those first few years is to get working in whatever way you can and do a really good job. And do a really good job. And I think, yes, now I've got a really good team. I can step away. I can look into this more and ask the right people, which I think is important. And only now am I realising how important it is to analyse how much work you've got coming in, how much everything's costing, why is it costing us so much, can we reduce the costs there? Whereas before, I just sort of it was all up in my head.
But I suppose the answers to your sort of question would be, it depends. I mean, ultimately, it's like a bit of a pyramid, really. You don't have to do anything if you didn't want to. If you've got enough money if money comes in and you're paying the bills, you're fine. I know that sounds very glib, but it's like it's only when the red letter comes on the door, sent to you and saying someone's taking you to court because you haven't paid a bill, that's when you realise you've got a problem.
Yeah.
So what do you then need to do? You need to find some way of actually understanding, well, how much money is coming in, how much money is going out.
Yeah.
Because then you start to know, well, am I making a profit, and how much money am I making?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is also the timing of the payments, because so many companies, and especially construction companies, go into administration not because they're not profitable, but because cash flow is rubbish. Because most construction companies are undercapitalised, they haven't got any money behind them. They work on cash flow coming in, so they're on a whopping great big job. They've got no pots of reserve, so if the client doesn't pay them or they get a low valuation, then all of a sudden they've got real financial problems.
Carillion.
So yeah, Carillion.
Yeah.
You've had it. Balfour Beatty nearly went under through that was through other reasons as well, but it's all cash flow. And we worked with. There's a number of companies we had, who went under just because basically when it was at my old company, we worked on problem jobs. So a problem job usually meant that there was problems with cash flow and all that type of stuff. So managing cash flow, I think, is probably what. Firstly, is knowing. Are you making some money? Are you profitable? Because you don't want to be like pricing a job and then the costs are too much.
Yeah.
So you need to know whether you've got some margin in it.
Yeah.
And then you need to know the timing of the money. And that'll be the first bits that anyone should know about finance.
It does. It also, as well, having that cash flow. If you don't know that answer, if you're like, well, hang on, when's this money going to run out? Straight away the being overwhelmed by that, you're thinking, hang on a minute, can I spend anything? It's like, do we? Not knowing that, it stops your business. Things stop.
Yes.
So understanding that, right, having a look forward. If all going well, this happens, we're going to be okay until this date. It gives everybody's a target to work to. It gives understanding that that's when we need our next job to come in or beforehand. Do we have knowing that, right, this is the date we need to get to, and suddenly, right, the van's just stopped on the side of the road. What does that actually mean? Does that mean we can do that? Does it? Where do we go? So having that cash flow. And understanding where your money is and where it's going, you think, well, you can make decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about if... Sorry,
go
can I
on,
ask you
go
a
on.
question? So, you were saying earlier, okay, so as long as fundamentally you've got money coming in, you're able to pay your bills.
Yeah.
You're saying like it's in a pyramid. So let's say you've got into... This is a hypothetical situation. I'm not saying I'm in this position at the moment, but like, money's coming in. You've got work. You know that. You may not be diligent on your finances. You don't really have a clue, but all you know is that you want to grow your business. What are like some of the steps you would take to go, yes, we can do that?
What, to grow it?
To grow. You're able to sustain what you've got, but how do you know, yes, I can grow?
I suppose the first thing I'll be thinking of if you want to grow is you've got to have solid foundations to start with.
Yeah.
Because the question then becomes, how do you want to grow your company? So there's a number of ways you can do it. You can grow it organically, you can grow it by acquisition, you can grow it by sort of merging with other companies. So there's you can get other people who want to invest in your company, which allows you to buy more stuff and to develop the company. So I think it becomes more a case of understanding how you want to grow the company. But even before that, there's no point growing a company if the company isn't being put on sound financial principles. So you need to know that you've got work. You just need to know the basics. Are you profitable? You need to know, how much money's coming in. You also need to have a reserve of cash as well.
Yeah.
I think as well, because if you've got no cash behind you, then it really limits you in terms of what you want to do.
Well, you could miss out on a good acquisition at the time, couldn't you? If you didn't have cash, if you had good cash and there was a good company available that you could.
Well, you could always
buy.
go out and get finance. You could always go to a company, someone to lend you money. But the thing is, those places where you get money from and finance are going to be. It's going to be easier if you've got a good trading history. And I always think it's worthwhile if you're a new company just to sort of like literally head down, arse up, get your savings account, put as much money away behind as possible, get yourself a good credit history so that all the suppliers you go off to will give you a good financial reference if you need it. And you also got money put aside. So the bank starts to see you as a reliable organisation. So if you then want to go and raise finance, you can go to them and say, look, we've been trading profitably for 3 years. We've had no one's issued a county court judgment or anything against us. We've had no issues or defaulted on payments. So you've got a good financial history. It's like it's your credit rating for your company. So once you're in that position and you've got some money behind you, it means your avenues are open as to how you want to expand, because you can then start to invest a bit more if you want to grow organically. You can then got money behind you potentially to raise finance if you want to go and buy another company. So I always think it's it's just trying to be very sort of savvy with your money and not trying to do things too quickly. I know everyone wants to grow quick, but it's doing things in stages. It's like establish your business, get a track record, get some money behind you, and then you can sort of decide which route you want to go to grow. Because the other thing also I was going to say to you is like, why do you try and keep all these records? Why do you try and analyse all this information? What's the point of it?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I was just throwing that out. I mean, I could give you some answers.
What's the point in analysing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important not only to know how you've previously traded. Obviously, it's important to know how you're going to do in the future, isn't it? Because if you've got no goal, then what you're doing it for. But I think well, I'm only just realising now why it's so important to analyse it, because we know now exactly how much money we're spending on marketing.
That's it.
We know exactly how much we're spending on vehicle finance. We know exactly
what it costs a year. That's what it costs to get a guy on the ground to the job.
Yeah.
And that, looking back and taking the analysis and looking at that, going, right, well, last year, this is how much it cost us to be able to get people to a job. So, it means that we have to charge this. And then from there, you can work out, so your goals that you'd like need to be, can be reached because you have this information to look back on. What jobs were profitable, what wasn't profitable. What did we do on that project that maybe didn't get us as much profit as we set out to do, or we can just look back. So analysing it is. It's those monthly meetings, isn't it?
Yeah.
You want to be doing it yourself every week, then a meeting every month, and then at the end of the year, and then it just opens your eyes massively, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then I suppose there's also like the question of, do you get someone in to help you with it? Which I think probably we all need help with it. But there's no good in getting someone else to run all the finances if you have no understanding of it.
Yeah.
And so that's true. Just learning why they're important and what they are and what their purposes are. Because I was saying to you the other day that we have too many spreadsheets, and you're like, there's not enough spreadsheets.
He loves a spreadsheet. He loves a spreadsheet.
Because you said to me that we have too many spreadsheets, and I said to you, how many spreadsheets have we got? And we went through, and there was about 5. And I'm thinking, that's not very many.
I know, it sounds like there's not a lot, but to me it sounds like a lot of fucking spreadsheets.
But because I think the other one also you're saying about like you growing and going forward, the one thing I always think is like if you've got this company, and if you want to grow it, say, in whatever form, you want to be able to map out what that growth looks like. And usually the way you do it is by mapping it out financially on some sort. That's why I'm always telling you guys with the, your plan the actual forecast. So the first part of that is like at the beginning of the start of the new financial year is sitting down in line with your business plan saying, okay, well, we want turnover and profitability to be X for the next 4 financial year. So that means we have to work out how many sales do we need, what types of jobs, how many jobs do we need,
how many people do we need,
how many people do we need to make that growth, what are our overheads going to be, where do we need to spend more on overheads. And then, and once you go down to that level of granularity, you've got a real insight into the sort of things that are important to your company and where the costs are being spent. And then each month, when you actually compare what you're doing with your forecast, you can start to see, well, are we on target? Are we likely to hit those things? Where are we spending too much on the costs? Am I taking too much money out? Am I, what? You've just got an analysis of what's going on. And to my mind, I always think the financials drive your company.
I absolutely... they do drive your company, and I just go back to knowing what they are, like knowing what they are, so you can forecast that, and if you do, if your plan be actual, your plan is one thing and you haven't quite made it, using that as good information.
Yes.
Making that, the goals, making them goals not out of your reach, aim for the stars, as I say, but understanding that, looking back on it, going, right, okay, where are we? Where, and looking at it positively as well. That's a big thing.
No, I think you're right. You have to look at all this information, and it's got to be analysed and that, because otherwise, it's helping you make decisions. And unless you've got, because I know a couple of times, Bill, when we've been talking, and you'll say something like, "Oh yeah, no, we need to do that," and I'm always like trying to probe and go, "Well, why? How do you make that decision? On what basis?" And I always think that you can't make a decision just based on anecdotal information in your head.
No.
Because often people have a tendency to skew what they think to reflect their own beliefs, and that's not actually right. When you actually look at the objective evidence,
Yes.
it's often very, very different.
And that I kind of use the same thing when we're doing the work. As we're doing the work, we allow the material to tell us what levels we need to go to. We allow the material to tell us how far we're going to come out from an area. If we've quoted for a patio that's going to be, 3 meters by 3 meters, whatever, and you think, well, actually, the material with the ACO channel is going to push us out to 3.2. Allow the material to tell you where we need to be going to. We're still laying the 3x3, patio in the same meterage, but we're adding an ACO on there. So we're allowing the material to go, that's where we're going. So it's the same as the cash flow and the analysis. It's allowing that to be like, okay, that's where we can go. There it is. That you're using the information in front of you to be like, that we can make a decision because I'm looking at it, I can see it, and that's what we want to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think with all these things, it's like it's just taking things up in tiers, isn't it? So, like, you'll have a project.
So I've been in tears a few times there.
You'd estimate a job, both of you would estimate a job, and then you'd want to be able to see whether, is that estimate correct? And you'll be managing a job on the basis of that estimate to say, okay, both in terms of time and money for certain sections. So if if your job has like a patio and it has some sleeper walls, you want to know, okay, we've got 5 days to do the patio, we've got 2 days to do the sleeper walls, and you're starting to manage things based on, you're using your finances to actually manage the job and to use that.
And then also, like, you can, I mean, what I found quite helpful is, is breaking it down day by day. I mean, as I said before, like, a lot of my jobs are 1 or 2 days, and we go, okay, with this amount of people, with 90% utilisation, how much do we need to make per day to meet our plan?
Yeah.
And unless I know that day by day, I could have just quoted some random number, which I thought would be an all right, acceptable amount of money that someone would be willing to pay for the job that I was saying. Whereas now I'm like, that's going to take the 3 people that, 3 people that I can put on that job this amount of time. That's how much money I need for it.
Yeah.
If there's 2 hours left at the end of the day, I'm still going to be paying. They're still going to be, I'm still going to be quoting for a full day because there's nothing they can do after that.
No.
And so if before, but I just would never break it down like that. Or now I'm like, if I want to hit this plan, I need to hit this amount of money. So that's what I'm charging per day. If someone doesn't want to pay for it, they're not going to get me to do it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Because the other thing that was interesting was like you were talking about paying for Google ads and paying for those types of things and thinking, and I know you sort of had concerns thinking, well, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And is it value for money? And that's where the sort of like the analysis comes in, doesn't it? Because I know what's good with you. You keep an inquiry schedule which has all your jobs. It has the sources where the work comes from.
Yeah.
Which allows you then to do analysis on what your return on investment is on each type of.
I'm pretty diligent on that, to be fair. Just making sure I log where that leads come from. Because before to be fair, I didn't do an awful lot of marketing apart from magazines and a few leaflets when I first started. So it didn't really matter. To me, it didn't really matter. But now I'm spending a lot of money on marketing. You're in 3 or 4 different magazines, the Google ads, the local services, and the occasional leaflet, whatever. That they cost money, and it's so important to know if the money you're spending on it is worth it. And how do you do that? You have to log every single inquiry that comes in and put it against the source. And then you can either drop them, because if you go, I'm spending too much money on marketing, well, what do? You find the least effective method of marketing and you drop it out.
But how you know that is by looking back.
It's by logging it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and then you can go, right, are we spending enough money on marketing? Could I put more money into marketing so I can grow?
Do you need to?
Yeah, or do I need to?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Or am I throwing money down the drain? Could I be putting that money away and using it for something else?
Yes.
And
but you've also got like a success percentage on tenders won.
Yeah.
Which is really useful because you're knowing then that if you've got about, 20 jobs to quote, you'll get an indication then we're thinking, well, if I'm going to win X%.
Bless you.
Sorry. So I mean, those stats are really invaluable, aren't they? You know, all round, and you know, whatever job. I know, you know, construction companies will always have their sort of tender success
Yeah.
percentages, so they get an idea of roughly what, you know, income they're going to be getting or likely to get, and the amount of tenders they need to get in, which is then going to drive the marketing efforts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
But yeah, I think for companies that are our size, it's the cash flow, an inquiry schedule, a plan. The actual is obviously really important, as we said, because it's like the driving force of your business. Is like where are we going? Let's plan out, and it's a financial plan as well. And then also, like, obviously started making a new one of, you know, it's
More
like,
spreadsheets.
more
yeah,
spreadsheets.
it's like what did I plan to do that week? How much is it going to get us? Is it going to fit into our plan? What actually happened? It's like two little plan, the actuals, but it's actually like it gives you a broader spectrum on, you know, what it's costing us that week and where we went wrong. You know, like it's, and then you can start going, oh, okay, so I underplanned it. You know, I've misquoted that.
Yeah.
And how has that affected me? You know, why before I go, why am I losing money? It's like, as I said, anecdotal stuff. Oh, we had a few bank holidays. Okay, well, actually, that was 3 weeks ago. It wasn't 2 weeks ago. You know, like it's actually plotting every single day and looking into it properly.
I still go back to. I had a lot of this in my mind. You know, when I was working, it was all up in my head.
Yeah.
It was all, you know, and
You
it
think
took
you know,
so much.
don't you?
Oh, you do.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you
I mean, I
give
know.
it a good go. Yeah, that's it. Of course you do. But giving it, you know, starting a business, you know, and being like, right, I've got control over this. You know, yeah, it's in my head. You know, but putting it onto that bit of paper and being like, right, that stays there. You know, that stays there. That's where it needs to be. That's where it is. When I'm looking at it, that's, you know, my mind's on that. And when I'm at the job, my mind's on that.
Yeah.
You know,
But
so it's
like,
taking it away from.
It's irrefutable evidence of how you're actually doing, isn't it?
Yeah, but exactly.
You might feel like you're doing all right. You might have just had like loads of big invoices being paid, and you're like, "Fuck me, I'm
That's
rich."
it. That's it. Yeah. That's
And then
it.
actually, like, well,
You're
no,
not,
you're actually
yeah.
not, because you got all these bills coming up. Whereas before, I might be like, I've got loads of money in the bank. Come on.
But that's where you should be. I mean, I think as a director, you're managing that company, and I think unless you've got a certain level of base information, you how can you manage it? You know,
Yeah.
you can't make. You're just really winging it. You're just carrying on day by day and hoping everything will go well, and that's not the way to run a company.
No, especially as, you know, when that does happen. All that happens, you end up chasing your tail because something's gone on in the job, it's gone over a wee bit, and then suddenly it's like, right, let's get the next job in, and you're actually using that money from the next job onto the one, and you don't know where you're at.
Yeah, you don't know. That's it. Because if you do know, you'd know whether. You know, whether you can actually increase the cost of the next job or the price of the next job to make a bit more profit, or whether you can be more efficient on that job, and also when you can, how long it's going to take to actually turn that thing around. And it's you can only ever do this with data.
Yeah.
I know one thing that was quite interesting when, say, with my old company, it's like,
Where was it?
used to, I can't mention names, but used to, you just you'd make some of these forms up essentially. You'd just be thinking, well, how do I know whether these guys are actually? Why am I making this amount of money? Who's making the money? And I'd sit there and you'd make a form up. And the one thing, because I always found that there was a big difference between what the accountant would tell me. So the accountant would like give me the accounts at the end of the year, and he'd go, "Oh, you had a great year this year. You made all this." And I'm looking at the bank account thinking, these two don't correspond.
Yeah.
And in the end, I used to get to the point where I think I'm not really bothered about what the accountant says. The accountant does his thing. I'm more interested in how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, how much money have I got in the bank, what am I spending on? All just those, and having them as my own management accounts. I mean, I'm not an accountant, but I like to have a grasp of what those, you know, the sort of financials in terms of the practicalities of running your business. Have I got enough cash in the company? Can I pay the blokes money? And then also, if you're then going to grow the company and develop it, am I working against my plan, the actual, where am I doing it? Am I making money? Why? All those types of things, but not doing it from an accountant's perspective. I think there's a big difference there.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
and that's not what the accountants do.
But
you
like
need
you said, they
them.
don't. Yeah, there's things in there you'll know that. Yeah, you'll know that number and think, oh, that was for that. You know, or and there's a big difference.
Yeah, I think also what's good. to know is your quoting success rate, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's really handy to know. How because I think, like back in the day, I think we figured it out when we first started, and I was over 85% successful on my quotes, which is too much. I mean, I'm not quoting enough. I'm quoting too cheaply that everyone's going yes.
Yeah.
Whereas like now I think it's less than 50%, isn't it, or something like that?
I think it's around about 50%.
Yeah, it's around 50%, which is I'm
Sounds
okay
good.
with that.
Yeah.
High volume of quotes, but you're getting the money that you need, as opposed to just winning everything and running around like a headless chicken.
Because you're not doing the quality. That's the thing. It's the quality you're paying for. You're paying for. You're winning the 50% of people who are going. Yes, we want this job done correctly.
Yeah.
That's what you're getting your clientele. You're getting your
You
clientele.
only know unless you analyse it.
That's exactly right.
Come on.
But I suppose the question comes down to then, are you two rich and running around in a Maserati?
Listen, if someone broke into my house to look for money, I'd stop and look with them. Are you mad? Not a chance. This is a lifestyle choice, I keep saying.
Yeah. But I suppose one thing is the one thing is you know where you're going, and hopefully, because it's always a slow burner. I think there's very few companies that are actually going to be instant successes, and I think all these people who say, "Oh yeah, you've got to do this and that," it's never going to happen. You've got to build things up gradually and consistently.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as long as you've got a grip on the finances, that's the main thing. So
Yeah.
Happy.
I mean, if you looked at my life, you'd think I was fucking minted. Actually,
you're Playboy Billy.
All the
Playboy
time.
Billy, I heard that. That's written on the M25 toilet, isn't it?
Oysters, cocktails, big meals out every weekend.
Every
Come on.
weekend, Caviar Kid.
Caviar Kid.
Right then, everyone. Well,
I know that's not true.
we're going to round this one up. I know the boys like talking about money, probably because it's something they haven't got.
Yeah, right.
But give it a year. And thank everyone once again for listening to the Outside Crowd. We're really delighted to have we've got quite a good following nowadays. So it's the podcast is growing, and we're delighted to have you as listeners. And so signing off. Thanks, Ryan.
Cheers.
Thank you, Billy.
Cheers.